Hi, and welcome to CryptoBiography. I'm your host, Brandon Starr, and this is episode 92, and it's going to be the first part of a story called The Last Zombie Hunter. So, going to start a new story off today. Hope you like it. If you have any comments or questions about this episode or previous episodes, cryptobiography@gmail.com. And here we go. Jack Prowse sized the creature up in front of him. Female, adult, average height and build, little necrosis and no visible decomp. This one had changed recently. Still, the stink made his nose wrinkle. She looked familiar, and it took him some time before he could place her. Oh yes, his wife's hairstylist. Too bad. She'd always seemed nice enough. He took his Bowie knife and stuck it through her left eye. She dropped instantly, as all her muscles went slack. It had all been silent, and Jack looked around, but saw no other zombies closing in. The afternoon sun was baking him, and he hoped that the town's drugstore would have supplies he was starting to need. He stepped inside, though there wasn't any air conditioning, of course, and though the sun was baking the roof, the relative dark made it feel cooler. The filthy floor was slick with fluids he decided not to think about too much, and so he made his way cautiously through the store. It was quiet. There had clearly been zombie activity here once, but none any longer. Perhaps they'd been drawn away by something, a noise or prey. Still, one or two could be shuffling around or even injured and ready to grab him in the gloom. Now that he was away from the doors and the few windows, he pulled out his LED flashlight and turned it on. He had a pistol, but decided that given the close quarters and the need for the flashlight, it was best to keep the knife out. Besides, pistols were for the last resort. They were loud. He had gotten some light injuries. It couldn't be helped, and had decided that it was time to find some antibiotics. He had no idea about the dosage and so on, but figured he could work it out. The pharmacy was at the back, as they always were. There was a half-zombie there. Well, the zombie was whole, but something had happened to its back. It could only move its arms. It growled at Jack as soon as he came into view by stepping around the pharmacy counter. "What happened to you?" Jack asked. He saw that the zombie was wearing the remains of a pharmacy lab coat and had a name tag that said Keith. "Well, sorry, Keith," he said, and stomped hard on its back so it could only reach feebly behind him. Jack's boots were in no danger from its long, dirty fingernails. He put the tip of the knife against the base of Keith's brain and pushed. Keith went still. Another quick check around confirmed that the pharmacy area was quiet. He saw that there was a door with a sign that told him that opiates would be stored in there. Not a bad idea, Jack thought. If I get injured, being able to alleviate pain might mean the difference between life and death. He went to the door and confirmed that it was locked. However, it also had a window, though it was shaded. Probably the room was meant for something else at one time, and the shade was put in when it was converted to a place to store addictive medicine. He took the hilt of the knife and popped the window. Immediately, an alarm sound started ringing extremely loudly. He could even hear a secondary speaker blasting outside. He swore. The electricity was out, damn it. They must have some sort of battery backup. Trouble would be coming. He glanced around, but not finding any medicine at hand that was worth grabbing, he turned around and made his way out of the pharmacy area and made a beeline for the front door. As he approached, he saw dozens of zombies walking toward the source of the sound, and damned if the external speakers weren't right by the front doors. The zombies were making right for the door. There was no time to bar the door. He had kept mostly out of sight, or so he hoped, so he looked around to see if there was another way out. Maybe there was one by the pharmacy, but if so, he hadn't spotted it when he was there. And besides, the alarm was ringing loudly from that department. If the bastards made it inside and went for that noise, he could be trapped. If there were exit signs, they would be tricky to spot. Their battery backups would have died out by now. He looked instead towards the photo department. It too might not have any exits, but at least it didn't have an alarm blaring from inside it. And if zombies were attracted to regular food, Jack wasn't sure if they were or weren't. There wasn't any there. The zombies did make it inside, and Jack was right. Most of them went for the pharmacy with its alarm, but others milled around. He couldn't tell if it was some sort of hunting instinct or if they were simply bouncing back and forth between the two alarm noises. The doors had been broken, the zombies were not gentle, and the outdoor speaker was nearly as loud as the indoor one. Hours went by, and the sirens' blares lowered in pitch and volume. They sounded tired. Eventually, they all but died out. Jack tried very hard to be quiet, but eventually, his body betrayed him. A leg cramp caused him to spasm, knocking his foot loudly into a chair. The noise drew the attention of many zombies. Most of the ones who had entered were still inside. Jack swore, leapt up, and scrambled along the front wall of the Walgreens toward the front doors. He was behind the long counter, which ended with some registers. There were no zombies there, but there were some right by the front door. They turned towards him. He leapt onto the counter, bounding over a register and jumping full force onto the zombie nearest the door. The zombie went flat on its back, but even as it reached to grab his boots, he was leaping off of it and crashing through the now broken door. There were dozens of zombies around, and they all saw him. It took a long time, but eventually Jack went down. Then, moments later, part of him stood back up and shuffled off. Another one of the horde. Most of his clothes had been torn off in the brutal melee. Watching all of this was me, Fred Stein. I watched him through binoculars. True, a number of details sprang from my imagination, but I have good faith that most, if not all, of Jack's story happened exactly that way. I watched him for hours. I'm a patient man. Many have wondered what the ideal pre-disaster occupation would be for a zombie apocalypse survivor. Navy SEAL? Outdoorsman? SWAT team officer? I would argue for my own occupation, antiques dealer. Surprised? Let me lay out my argument. First, the electricity was gone by the end of the first day, so anyone relying on electronics, or really modern equipment of most kinds, was going to be up a creek right away. That includes a lot of what SEALs and police and so on get by with. Of course, they're good at the outdoors thing, and they'll be fine for a while. On the other hand, not only do I know how to use a lot of old equipment, I know how to fix it. And even better, I know how to recognize it. There are a lot of old ways to start fires and do other useful things that are no longer used in modern society. So I don't have to do the outdoors thing. Not to mention that my antiquing has led to other useful hobbies like woodworking. You could plop me down in the 19th or even 18th century and I'd get by just fine. Which is sort of what has happened. Fuck. Now, Jack had his skills, but he broke a few rules too. One of the most important rules for me is know before you go in how you'll get back out. He knew what he wanted, but when things went wrong, he immediately had to improvise. Eventually, the zombies cleared out, and I was able to retrieve Jack's wallet, which had his name and some other details, which helped me figure out what he had done and why. Weird how everyone still carries wallets. Hope remains that our society will return, I suppose. I watched him from about a block away through binoculars. Not an old-fashioned spyglass, but some nice modern binocs I'd come across. I was in my home, which is now half of my home. The ground floor was my antique shop. I stripped it of everything that might be valuable and completely blocked off the one set of stairs. I go up or down via rope ladders, which I keep tied up above head height when I'm out, or completely pulled up when I'm in. I'm not sure the zombies have enough dexterity to use a rope ladder. Probably not, but they sure are strong, and they could easily damage or pull down my ladders if they got a hold of them. I didn't try to go into the Walgreens. I had gotten what I wanted from there days ago. It was a full-day trip, and I took it very slowly. I never even saw a zombie, except that broken-backed one in the pharmacy, Keith. I snagged what I needed and avoided him pretty easily. And I didn't try to get anything fancy from the back, so I never tripped that alarm. I didn't even know about it until Jack tripped it. So I guess maybe I'm being a little too smug when I say that I know better than him just because he's zombie chow and I'm in my home. It took me a long few days to quietly block up my store, loot it for the essentials, and then take it up and block the stairway, all without drawing undue attention. I say undue because it was impossible to do it without any attention at all. Nothing in my life quite prepared me for lying on a floor for a few hours while moans and scratching at my boarded-up doors and windows went on, afraid to make a noise that would be heard and cause still more agitation. The near darkness and midday heat, due to all the windows being blocked, was a strange sensation I won't soon forget. My next few days were spent trying to figure out the rules. Partly these were my rules, like the one about knowing how to get out before you go in. But really, I needed to know the zombie rules. How fast were they? Not terribly, but not walking pace either. How smart? Not terribly, though they seemed to remember how to use doorknobs by the way they would paw and tug at them. I haven't seen one use a tool yet, even by accident. Would they recreate the dawn of man in time? No way to know, and a little outside my current purview. How many were there? Lots and lots. How was it spread? It's hard to say, but they don't all seem to be eaten. So maybe a small bite or injury is enough to cause the disease? Or maybe anyone who dies for any reason rises as one of them? Not enough information, but enough to make me concerned. Even a small injury may be fatal. Of course, a lot of things may be fatal that wouldn't have been before. Another thing that really concerns me is the lack of humans. There were a number of them on the first day. I couldn't save them. By the time I saw any, I had boarded up my shop. I was upstairs taking a rest and trying to learn about them when I saw 3 people running by. 2 white guys and a black woman. Not a lot of black folks in our little town way out in nowhere in Washington State. But I didn't recognize her, or them. I didn't know if they were all friends or whatever, or if they'd just been thrown together by unhappy chance. They ran by in front of the Walgreens, pursued by a pretty good-sized crowd of zombies. It was a sad, helpless feeling. I had no way at that point to bring anyone up to the top of my store. I had not made my rope ladders yet, so I had to watch them run, screaming, out of sight. It was a memory that got stuck in my head, and it keeps coming up at night. I'm afraid that one of these nights I'm going to wake up screaming and call a bunch of the creeps to my store. Because of that, I sleep in the room furthest inside. It used to be a storeroom, but now my bed is in there. My bedroom has too many thin windows. I've sometimes screamed into my pillow at night. It's the isolation that is getting to me. The zombies don't seem to care one way or the other. They do cluster up, but it seems to be related to following noises or sights, maybe smells, though I don't have any proof of that. Either way, they don't care when one of them drops. They don't even notice. But I look at them and just see things that used to be people, and the people I have seen have all been in severe distress. It's gotten on my nerves. And that's where the story ends for this week. Hope you're enjoying it so far. If you have any comments or questions about this episode or previous episodes, CryptoBiography@gmail.com. And thanks for listening. Copyright 2019, CryptoBiography LLC, all rights reserved. Characters and events are fictional, fictionalized, or satirical.